Primm Valley Resort once hosted championship golf tournaments that drew players from across the country. Today, its fairways sit nearly empty, the silence broken only by the wind. A course this beautiful, this well designed, doesn't just die quietly without a reason. So, what really happened to one of the most ambitious golf destinations ever built on the edge of the Nevada desert? And is there any chance it ever comes back? The flags are still there. They flutter in the dry desert wind, bright and colorful against a sky so blue it almost hurts to look at. The fairways stretch out long and green, perfectly cut, edges sharp and clean. The sand traps are raked smooth. The greens are trimmed tight. Everything looks exactly the way a championship golf course is supposed to look. Everything except the people. There are almost none. You walk the grounds at Primm Valley Golf Club on a weekday afternoon, and the quiet hits you first. Not peaceful quiet, not the kind of quiet you find on a lazy Sunday morning. This is something else. This is the quiet of a place that used to be full and isn't anymore. Cart paths sit empty. Clubhouse chairs are pushed in and waiting. The pro shop has gear on the racks, shirts folded, clubs lined up, price tags still swinging, but there is almost no one to buy any of it. A staff member moves slowly near the entrance. A single golf cart sits parked near the first tee. The wind moves through the palm trees, and that is about the only sound you hear. This is Primm Valley, Nevada, a small desert outpost sitting right on the line between California and Nevada, about 45 miles southwest of Las Vegas on Interstate 15. Millions of cars pass through here every single year. California families driving to Vegas for the weekend, Vegas locals heading west, truckers, road trippers, people just passing through. Primm is the first Nevada town you hit when you cross the state line. And for a long time, that felt like an advantage. It felt like opportunity. It felt like a reason to build something big, and build they did. Primm Valley Golf Club was not some small local course tossed together over a long weekend. This was a serious project. 2 full championship courses designed by architect Tom Fazio, one of the most respected names in golf course design in the entire country. Fazio courses have hosted some of the biggest tournaments in the sport. His designs are known for flowing naturally with the land around them, using the shape of the terrain instead of fighting it. Here, in the Mojave Desert, that meant sweeping layouts that moved with the hills and valleys, courses that felt like they belonged in the landscape, rather than being dropped on top of it. The desert course and the lakes course together gave Primm Valley over 36 holes of championship golf. The desert course ran across rugged natural terrain, with wide fairways framed by desert brush and rocky ridges in the distance. The lakes course brought in water, features that felt almost surreal out here in the dry heat, artificial lakes catching the sunlight and turning the whole thing into something that looked more like a resort in Arizona than a truck stop in the Mojave. The courses were genuinely beautiful. That part was never in question. When the resort was at its peak, golfers came from across the region. Las Vegas visitors made the drive down the interstate specifically to play here. Golf magazines took notice. Tournament organizers set up events. The courses were listed alongside other top desert destinations in California and Nevada. On a busy weekend, both courses could be full from first light to last tee time, carts humming up and down the paths, laughter coming from the practice green, the smell of sunscreen and fresh-cut grass mixing in the warm air. Primm Valley was not just surviving, it was competing. It was a real destination. And that word matters. Destination. Because to turn Primm into a destination, you had to convince people to stop, not just glance over as they pass the exit sign at 70 miles an hour, but actually pull off the highway, check in somewhere, stay a night or two, and spend real time here. The casinos tried. Primm has 3 of them: Primm Valley Resort, Whiskey Pete's, and Primadonna. They sat right at the state line, bright and visible from the highway, almost impossible to miss. They offered rooms, restaurants, entertainment, and, of course, the golf. The idea was simple: give people enough reasons to stop, and they will stop. For a while, it worked. The late 90s and early 2000s were good years for Primm. Las Vegas was exploding, and some of that energy traveled down the road. The drive from Southern California to Las Vegas passed right through here, and travelers had money to spend. The casinos were busy enough, the golf courses were busy enough. Everything felt like it was on an upward line. But even in those better years, there were cracks that were easy to miss if you were not looking closely. Primm was always a place people passed through. It was a pit stop wrapped in neon. You grabbed gas, you hit a slot machine for 20 minutes, you maybe played a round of golf if you had planned ahead. You did not come to Primm the way you came to Vegas. You did not build your whole trip around it. You did not book a week-long vacation and tell your friends you were headed to Primm Valley. The town was never quite a destination in the truest sense of the word. It was a pause, a comma in the middle of someone else's sentence. And when things started to shift, when Vegas kept growing bigger and louder and more spectacular, when the competition for those California driver dollars got sharper and more intense, that pause got shorter, the comma got smaller, people started skipping the exit entirely. The fairways are still beautiful, the flags are still flying, but the carts are parked, the clubhouse is quiet, and the question that hangs over all of it, the one that nobody around here seems to have a clean answer to, is simple. How did it get this empty? To understand how Primm Valley fell this quiet, you have to go back to when it was loud. And it was loud. Not Vegas loud, not neon and crowds loud, but loud in the way that a place with real momentum sounds. Busy parking lots, full tee sheets, phones ringing at the pro shop. The sound of a place that believed in itself. It started with geography. When the developers behind Primm Valley looked at that stretch of desert along Interstate 15, they did not see a problem. They saw a pipeline. Every single weekend, hundreds of thousands of cars rolled down that highway, connecting Southern California to Las Vegas, Los Angeles, San Diego, the Inland Empire, Orange County. Millions of golfers lived within a 2 to 3 hour drive of this exact spot, and every one of them had to pass right by the Primm exit on their way to Vegas or on their way home. The thinking was straightforward. Build something great enough and those cars will stop. Build 2 championship Tom Fazio courses and a full resort around them, and you have yourself a destination. Tom Fazio was not a random choice. He was the choice by the time he took on the Primm Valley project. Fazio had already built courses that golfers talked about in the same breath as the best in the country. His designs had a reputation for feeling natural, for moving with the land instead of against it, for creating holes that were challenging without being cruel. He was expensive and he was worth it. And bringing him to the Mojave Desert sent a clear signal. This was not going to be a filler course. This was not a layout thrown together to give casino guests something to do between blackjack sessions. This was a serious golf facility built for serious golfers. The desert course came first. Fazio worked with the natural contours of the Mojave, letting the terrain dictate the shape of the holes. Fairways moved through desert, washes, and around rocky outcroppings. Native brush framed the edges of the layout, giving the whole course a raw, wide-open feeling that you could not fake. On a clear morning, which was almost every morning, the light hit the desert floor at a low angle and turned everything gold. Standing on the first tee with the mountains in the distance and nothing but open space in front of you, it genuinely felt like somewhere worth driving to. Then came the Lakes course. This one was a different kind of statement. Water in the Mojave is not something you expect. You cross into this landscape, and your eyes adjust to brown and tan and the bleached out gray of dry rock. So, when the lake's course revealed itself with its artificial lakes shimmering in the desert heat. It stopped people cold. The contrast was the point. It was theatrical in the best possible way. Fazio used water not just as a hazard, but as a visual centerpiece, building holes that required players to carry over or curve around, large bodies of water that caught the sky and reflected back a version of the desert that felt almost dreamlike. It was the kind of course that made you take photos before you even teed off. Together, the two courses gave Primm Valley something genuinely rare in that part of the country: variety. You could play 36 holes and feel like you had experienced two completely different rounds of golf that mattered to serious golfers who came back year after year looking for a different challenge. It also mattered to resorts and event organizers who wanted options. And the events came. Tournament organizers recognized what they had. Over the years, Primm Valley hosted significant professional and celebrity events that put the course in magazines and in television broadcasts. The Buy.com Tour, which was the developmental circuit feeding directly into the PGA Tour, held events here. Pros competed on the same fairways that weekend golfers walked every day. That kind of credential meant something. It meant the course was not just pretty, it was legitimate. The resort infrastructure tried to match the ambition of the courses. Primm Valley Resort offered hotel rooms that looked out over the golf course, the kind of view that made a morning tee time feel like a natural extension of waking up. The casino was there for the evenings. Restaurants tried to cover the meals in between. The whole package was designed around the idea that you could arrive on a Friday afternoon, check in, play around before dinner, gamble a little, sleep well, wake up and play again Saturday morning, and leave Sunday feeling like you had actually been somewhere. Not just passed through, but been somewhere. For a stretch of years in the late 90s and into the mid 2000s, that vision held together. Golf was in a boom cycle nationally. Tiger Woods had changed the sport completely. Courses across the country were reporting record rounds. Equipment sales were up. Golf had reached a kind of cultural peak where even people who had never swung a club felt like they should try it. Primm Valley rode that wave. On a busy weekend, the parking lot filled up early. The starter at the first tee kept things moving. The halfway house between nines did steady business in cold drinks and snacks. It felt alive. There were people who came back every spring, the same group of friends from the same city, booking the same rooms, playing both courses over a long weekend, making it a tradition. For them, Primm Valley was not a compromise or a consolation prize. It was their place. They knew which greens ran fast and which holes played longer than they looked. They knew to book the desert course for late afternoon when the shadows came across the fairways and the temperature dropped just enough to make the walk feel easy. That loyalty was real, and it was not nothing, but it was also not enough to hold against what was coming. Stand at the edge of the 18th green on the desert course and look back at where you came from. The fairway runs long and straight behind you, framed on both sides by desert brush that has been here longer than any casino on this highway. The mountains sit in the distance, unchanged. The sky above Primm is the same sky it has always been, wide and pale blue and completely indifferent to everything that has happened down below it. The course itself is still here. That is not nothing. In a story full of things that collapsed and disappeared, the grass is still green, and the flags are still flying, and the sand traps are still raked clean every morning by someone who shows up and does the work regardless of how many tee times are on the sheet. That matters more than it might seem. Because the easiest outcome for Primm Valley Golf Club was complete abandonment. When casino revenues started falling and the big operators began pulling back and the crowds thinned out, plenty of resort golf courses in similar situations simply closed. The maintenance. Budgets got cut, then cut again, then eliminated entirely. The grass went brown. The irrigation systems were shut off. The clubhouses were locked and the equipment was sold. It happened to courses all over the country after the golf boom faded and the financial pressure became too heavy to carry. Primm Valley did not go that way. The courses are still operational. They are still maintained. Someone is still making the decision every single day to keep the lights on and the water running and the greens trimmed to the right height. That decision is not free and it is not automatic and it deserves to be recognized for what it is. But operational and thriving are two very different things. And the honest truth about where Primm Valley Golf Club stands right now is somewhere in the uncomfortable middle ground between those two words. The courses function, the tee sheets are not completely empty. Golfers still show up, some of them regulars who have been coming for years and feel a genuine loyalty to the place, some of them curious visitors who found it online and wanted to try something different. On a good weekend morning, there is still life here. Carts moving down the paths, the sound of a club striking a ball cleanly, a group of friends laughing near the putting green. The bones of something real are still visible if you know where to look. The question is whether bones are enough. The question is whether a golf course built on the promise of volume and destination traffic can survive in an era when both of those things have dried up. Primm was designed to catch people in motion, to pull them off a busy highway and hold them long enough to spend real money and build real memories. The highway is still busy. Interstate 15 still carries enormous traffic every single weekend, the same California to Vegas pipeline that made this location look so promising in the first place. The cars are still passing. They are just not stopping the way they used to. There are people who believe that can change, not through wishful thinking, but through a realistic reassessment of what Primm Valley actually is and what it can honestly offer. The argument goes something like this. The courses are genuinely good. Tom Fazio's work does not age poorly. The design bones are sound and the landscape around them is still dramatic and beautiful in the specific way that only the Mojave Desert can be. If the pricing came down to match the reality of what Primm is today rather than what it hoped to be 20 years ago, and if the experience was marketed honestly as a remote desert escape rather than a Vegas-adjacent luxury resort, there is a version of this story where golfers who are tired of crowded courses and high green fees find their way here and decide to make it their own quiet tradition. That version of the story requires honesty. It requires the people running this operation to look at the empty cart paths and the quiet clubhouse and the tee sheets with too much open space and admit that the old model is not coming back. The era of Primm as a busy regional destination with full courses every weekend and a casino humming every night is over. Fighting that reality with aggressive pricing or outdated marketing or false confidence is only going to accelerate the decline. But accepting it and building something new and smaller and more sustainable on top of what is actually here is at least a path worth exploring. The golf industry itself has been changing in ways that could work in Primm's favor if the timing aligns. The pandemic years sent millions of new players to golf courses across the country. Younger golfers entered the sport, and many of them stayed. The demand for tee times at public and resort courses has been real and measurable in many parts of the country. More people are also looking for off-the-beaten-path experiences, places that feel less manufactured and more authentic, courses where you are not packed in shoulder to shoulder with three other groups and rushing through your round. Primm Valley, for all its struggles, genuinely offers space. It offers quiet. It offers the feeling of having a championship course largely to yourself on a Tuesday morning with the desert stretching out in every direction and nothing on your schedule but 18 holes and a cold drink at the turn. That is something. That is actually something a certain kind of golfer will drive a long way to find. Whether Primm Valley finds those golfers before the financial pressure becomes too heavy to carry is the real question. The fairways are still green today, the flags are still up, the desert wind still moves through the palm trees near the clubhouse in the late afternoon, and the light still turns gold across the 18th fairway right before sunset in a way that makes you stop and just look for a moment. So tell me, is Primm Valley Golf Club a place that just needs the right moment to find its way back? Or is the silence out here the sound of something that has already ended and just hasn't been told yet? Leave your answer in the comments below. And if you want more stories about forgotten places and what really happened to them, subscribe. I will see you in the next one.